So we leave Limpopo and focus on developments in this matter, the acquittal of rape accused televangelist Timothy Omotoso, sparking concerns now and raising calls for accountability. The Gqeberha High Court cleared Omatoso and his two co-accused of all charges, including those relating to human trafficking. The Justice Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi has demanded a report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions to clarify the circumstances under which all of this happened. And Advocate Shamila Batohi joins us now to share her reaction and just to talk to us about what happens next in this matter. Advocate Batohi, good morning to you. Thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate it. And I want to go straight to what we heard in that ruling by Judge Irma Skuman yesterday. Cross-examination had lasted less than a morning and was just a synopsis of the accusations. It was shallow and lacked intent to uncover the truth. As NDPP, how did you feel hearing that?
No, good morning. Well, firstly, to answer your question, not good at all. But before I elaborate, I think I must first say that this decision is has a devastating impact on our fight in this country against sexual and gender-based violence. But more importantly, it has a devastating impact on the victims in this particular matter. And, you know, we as the NPA will make sure, and me as the National Director, that we leave no stone unturned in trying to understand what led to the acquittal in this matter. Whenever, this is not the first time we've had acquittals in these types of cases, it happens. But if there are any allegations that prosecutors are responsible for this, we actually make sure that there's investigations that are done in order to get to the bottom of it and ensure that there's accountability and consequences, whatever is necessary in the circumstances. So in this particular case, firstly, let me say these are complicated matters. Indeed, this matter has proceeded for over 8 years. And I do want to take the country into confidence and explain what has happened to the extent that we understand it at this point. And before I do that, I think it's really important for me to say that these are highly emotional matters. And we must ensure that we get the facts and that we don't jump to conclusions without really making sure that we conduct the proper inquiries into what happened. Emotional responses might be good sometimes, you know, they help us understand the gravity of certain things, but they can also be very dangerous. We're dealing with people, we're dealing with, you know, prosecutors, witnesses, and allegations and responses that are not properly and carefully interrogated affect lives.
Yeah.
And so it's really incumbent on all of us, including the media, to really be careful that we don't jump to conclusions before we get all the facts. So in this particular case,
if I may interject there, when you talk about these emotional responses, which you say might be good, but also dangerous, what do you have in mind?
What I'm saying is that when we actually jump to conclusions about whether people have in fact conducted them in a particular way without properly understanding all the facts, it can be dangerous because we conclude that people have done things that are wrong, but an investigation might either clear them or in fact confirm that they have done things wrong. Maybe I should just add, there was a case recently involving a 7-year-old, and there was a lot of emotional reaction to it. And I don't want to give details, but persons that have been implicated are actually not implicated, and it has destroyed lives. So I think we must be very, very careful because these are hugely important cases. We need to make sure that we throw everything in our response to the scourge of gender-based violence. Yeah. But we have to make sure that we approach it very carefully. Now, in this particular case, there's been a lot that's been said in the media, and of course you quoted recently, well, just earlier, what the judge said in this particular matter about the prosecution. Let me give some of the facts that we have as it stands. There were indeed allegations against prosecutors in this matter as far back as 2023. It may have even been 2022. But in 2023, the DPP of the Eastern Cape wrote to the Deputy National Director, Advocate Rodney de Kock, and, well, it's to give you the date, I think it was on the 8th of, it was in October, 10th of October, 2023, indicating that there were allegations with regard to prosecutors in this matter, and that if they were serious allegations, they needed to be investigated. And at that stage, the Deputy National Director, Advocate de Kock, and the DPP decided that in order to conduct, that it would be, if an investigation were to be conducted at that stage into these allegations, it would seriously impact on the case itself, because the allegations involve not just the conduct of the prosecutors, but to investigate it, you needed to interview the witnesses. There were allegations of emails being sent to the defense at that time. So in order not to derail the case, the Deputy National Director, Advocate de Kock, and the DPP decided that they will stay that investigation until a later stage.
Yeah.
When the state case was closed last year, in August, on the 8th of August, 2024, to be precise, the DPP then again contacted the national office, and they decided that given that the state case had been closed, that the investigation must commence. And so an investigator was appointed last year, and I am given to understand that it is far advanced and that I will receive a report very shortly. So that explains why the investigations didn't happen at that time. And so pending me getting a report and understanding exactly what happened in this matter, I think we should be very careful that we don't accuse people of having done wrong things without having all the facts.
Well, let's go then, Advocate Batohi, if I may, because I'm hoping to just cover a couple of big points, and I do appreciate the background on that particular matter. And I'm going to talk about it directly because Judge Skuman went to it, said that the initial poor handling of the case by advocates Nkeba and Telwa and how slowly the NPA responded played a role in how this case fared ultimately. For a prosecutor with 14 years experience to not know the legal definition of rape, either extremely incompetent or dishonest, and both of those are damning. My question was going to be, what action have you taken on Advocate Ntelwa? You've just explained exactly what the course is, and you're expecting a report on that. But that decision, and some might say, well, why wouldn't there have been a trial within a trial? Because the case ultimately ended up falling flat on its face, and part of the reason why was because of the performance of the prosecuting team.
Sorry, I'm not understanding your question about a trial within a trial.
I'm saying you wanted to deal with the matter of the competency or the issues, right, relating to this particular advocate in question. The decision was made that if we did anything then, it would impact the case, and, you know, because you would have to interview the witnesses and people involved, which is why it was then handled. The decision was then given to the end of the case now in August last year. But I'm saying ultimately, could other moves have been made to deal with the issue head on much earlier, as opposed to wait till the end when the outcome has already been so damning in any event?
Yes, absolutely. There were things that the DPP, it was DPP Sakata who was there in the Eastern Cape at the time. And he has indicated to me that at that point, he in fact removed Advocate Ntelwa from the case. But in order to ensure that there was a smooth transition, that he was being utilized to ensure that the new team actually was fully briefed on the matter, and that all of the knowledge that he had on the case, he was able to make sure that the transition, the move from a new team, from an old team to a new team, was a smooth one, and it didn't impact on the case itself. So yes, there were certainly steps that the DPPs took at that time to ensure that they protected the integrity of the case. But we need to ensure, in order to take action against a prosecutor, I have to wait for the investigation report and then decide. Yes, the judge has certainly made certain very, very damning accusations, and those are the very aspects of the investigation. They are covered in the investigation, and that will certainly give me, together with the DPP, a clear understanding of what exactly transpired, get all the facts before we make any decision about consequences in the matter.
What I'm hoping for later, and we'll get there momentarily, is just to talk about what it takes to take on cases like this. But I want to go to the reaction from the Justice Ministry. They are furious, as you've seen. They've invoked the NPA Act now. The minister has to demand answers or this report from you. What have they said to you directly, and when will you be ready to respond on this request?
So, like the minister being outraged about this matter, I should say that as the national director, I am equally outraged by the way this matter has panned out and the outcome in this matter. So I'm not surprised that the minister has requested a report. I met with the minister in Cape Town this week and verbally briefed her on it. But of course, it is in terms of the act, the minister has the prerogative to ask for these reports. It's not the first time. Previous ministers have done it. And certainly the minister has asked for a report by Monday. I don't think it's unlikely I will get the investigation report by that stage, but we will certainly submit a report to the minister with all of the information that we have at this point. So yeah, it's something that the minister is entitled to do, and I will certainly respond to her.
So I think interviews like these are so important because it gives the public an insider's view on how things actually work, sort of moment to moment. So how do you deal with this? I mean, who do you talk to? I mean, who are you asking for answers on what went wrong here?
Well, I've spoken to certainly my team, the deputy national directors, the DPP in the Cape Town, Mr. Madolo, the DPP now in the Northern Cape, who was the acting DPP in the Eastern Cape at that time, to try to get answers to some of the questions pending the investigation report. So, and that is why, having spoken to them, I really want to emphasize that we should wait for the investigation. And I give my absolute commitment to the people of this country that we will get to the bottom of this, both with regard to potential misconduct on the part of prosecutors, as well as prosecutors not having the necessary skills to deal with the matter with regard to allegations of not understanding the definitions of rape, the poor quality of the cross-examination. I should say that the prosecutors, having spoken to the DPP, have a different view on this. But of course, that's not to be unexpected. But that is why I have asked that we get the transcript of that matter, and there will be a thorough, I will get an opinion. I don't want to call it a review because there's a legal process, but we have a sexual offences and community affairs unit in the National Prosecuting Authority. I am going to hand that transcript to them, and we will get a little team of highly skilled prosecutors who will read the full transcript of the case, including the cross-examination, and give me a view on whether they think that the judge's comments were in fact justified. And then we will decide on potential consequences or what we need to do to address that.
Because it's concerning, Advocate Batohi, that one of the people you're expecting to help with this report is Eastern Cape DPP Advocate Barry Madolo, who you just mentioned now, was on another news station last night saying, I've kept my finger on the pulse of the court proceedings. The prosecutors did a good job. You as the NPA are not speaking with one voice on this. How concerned are you that you have different views on how this went?
Sorry to interrupt you. I think Mr. Madolo was, trying to protect his prosecutors in the face of an investigation. But just to assure the public that the look into this, the investigation into the conduct of the prosecutors, as far as the actual case and the cross-examination, etc., is concerned, that won't involve the Eastern Cape office. It will be managed from the national office. As I said, our sexual offences and community affairs unit will drive that. And of course, if they need information from the region, they will have to engage with the DPP. But it certainly will be an investigation that will be conducted from the national office. And the DPP's office will only be engaged for any information that we need. But the team will be from the national office.
So just to be clear, they're being investigated themselves?
The conduct of the prosecutors with regard to what the judge said concerning lack of proper cross-examination, lack of skills with regard to understanding of, definitions of rape, etc. So those are going to be an investigation from the National Office. But there are two separate investigations. The one is an investigation that I talked about earlier, where there were allegations 2 or 3 years ago directed against Mr. Advocate Ntelwa and maybe some other prosecutors as well. That is an investigation that has started now in August last year, as I mentioned. But this is now with regard to the conduct of the prosecutors during this trial, the current prosecutors, and that's not Ntelwa. We need to be clear that Advocate Ntelwa was removed from the case. That's a separate investigation. But the judge's comments about the conduct of the prosecutors in this particular case, they are different prosecutors. And in that regard, I am conducting an investigation from the National Office to look into the conduct of the prosecutors during the trial not before the trial.
What's the next step on this particular case of Omatoso following their acquittal?
The DPP in the Eastern Cape, we are trying to get the judgment from the judge's office. The Eastern Cape office has been engaging with the office of the judge since the judgment was rendered. My understanding this morning is we still don't have the judgment, the written judgment. So once that is studied, I'm also waiting for that. A decision will be taken on whether to take the matter on appeal or not.
You pointed out earlier, Advocate Batohi, we're a country riven with GBV. The Law Library reports that especially teens who experience unwanted sexual conduct rarely report. 5% of incidents were reported to police, 25% reported to other authorities like school officials or employers. But it took a lot for these victims to come forward. What do you say to them directly? Speak as if they're watching you this morning and can hear you.
I spoke to my team this morning and I said I want to meet with them. These are courageous young ladies. And I want to say to you, thank you for your courage. Thank you for speaking out. And I feel your hurt at this point in time. But I want you to know, and many, many other victims, that as a prosecuting authority, we are committed to ensuring justice for ladies like you. And I will make sure that we get to the bottom of this to ensure what happened in this case. You should feel proud that you have stood up to this kind of conduct. And we are looking into the matter and will consider whether an appeal is possible. But I want you to know that you have done nothing wrong and that you've been extremely courageous. And this is what we want women to do. And hopefully the end of this, the conclusion of this matter will in fact still give, will give women the confidence in the system to come forward and speak and not have the opposite effect. I want to say that as a prosecuting authority, there are thousands of prosecutors prosecuting sexual and gender-based violence cases every day in our courts, and most of them are successful. We have a very, very high conviction rate. I think it's around, I don't want to get the wrong figures, but we have thousands of victims that walk into the Thuthuzela care centers every day. In fact, in 2021, we had 29,583 victims coming to the TCCs. In 2024, we had 39,795 victims coming to the Thuthuzela care centers that are served by dedicated professionals, from whether it's the police, the prosecutors, the services provided by the Department of Social Development, the Department of Health, all working together to make sure that victims are not re-traumatized, that we can help them on their journey to becoming survivors.
Yeah.
And so I want to still give you the assurance that this is a top priority. This is one case, and I certainly hope that this case is not the brush with which the entire system is painted, because there's lots of extremely hardworking professionals in all the departments I mentioned that are trying really hard to help victims on the journey to becoming survivors. So
Advocate Batohi,
we will get to the bottom of this matter.
You say that you want to meet with them. Has your office made overtures already?
No, it was just something I spoke to them, and I don't want it to become a public thing, because it's something that I just want to do privately.
Right.
So you asked me about it, so I spoke about it, but it's not something I intended to communicate because it's a private thing. I didn't want to make it public, but it is, yeah.
Let's go back to some of the things you said earlier, Advocate Batohi, and about really moving in an evidence-based way in how we make our appraisals about the effectiveness of prosecutions in the country. Chillingly, the consequence of, in this particular case, has been, and according to your own NPA spokespersons, the charges were reduced from 63 to a lower number due to witness disinterest. Some witnesses no longer wanted to testify. They said they'd moved on with their lives. They didn't want to relive their experiences. And the significant delays in this case contributed to this change of heart. And I know that you've had your mea culpa moment and saying, yes, this group has been let down, but it has also sent a signal to others pursuing justice that it will take years and you may get nowhere, so don't bother. How much damage do you think this is caused to your reputation?
I certainly hope that is not the takeaway from this particular case, is that we should not bother with reporting these matters. The reality is that it took 8 years because of constant applications by the accused. And this is something that our justice system has to deal with. For 8 years, the accused has been trying to avoid trial by bringing interlocutory application upon application. And the prosecution, the state, was successful in all of those. But that is almost the sole reason for this matter dragging on for 8 years, and for witnesses getting fed up with the process. And that is an excellent delaying tactic. And I'm not saying, I don't want to cast aspersions by the defense on this matter. So I want to be careful about how I say this. But I've had, defense counsel that say to me, delaying tactic is a great strategy, because this is exactly what happens. Witnesses get fed up and they don't want to testify anymore. Witnesses, their recollection gets weaker, so it weakens the state case. And so we really have to ensure that judges are more strong in ensuring that these Stalingrad tactics, that we take a very hard line on this. And of course, within the independent mandate of the judiciary. But unless there is very, very strong case management, this is going to continue. And the system needs to look at how do we ensure justice for victims when cases like this are allowed to drag on for years because of applications that are brought by the defense.
Yeah. Advocate Batohi, these are grave issues, and we've really sort of couched our conversation in the aftermath of this particular decision, and we note what you're saying. But, it's almost as if the public wants, and this is the thing, the public is invested in your success, is invested in the success of the NPA, because it means that there's justice and there's accountability. But we are seeing, over and over in big cases where it seems as if the NPA is not up to the task, or the evidence doesn't meet the moment, or the prosecution is lacking in some ways. I'm thinking of the Frieda dairy product. I'm thinking a project. I'm thinking of the Kusile corruption case. Thinking of other cases. How do you feel loss after loss on massive cases where there's a missed opportunity to really win the public's trust and to really get people to rally around your success?
I think, let me say firstly, when you say case after case, it's, of course, there have been devastating big cases, setbacks in big cases. Let me put it that way, because there haven't been losses. And I think it's important for the country to understand this. And this is not being defensive, it's being factual. When we do come to conclusions and opinions about things, it should be based on facts. I agree with you. There have been some really big setbacks. The Estina Dairy Farm matter, which you mentioned, the matter was adjourned last year for trial for this year in August. And that is 1 year later. It's another concern that we have is that these matters take the periods, the backlogs in the court means that we don't get earlier trial dates. So that matter is on the roll, that case. And so what are the other matters? The other matters that are often spoken about in the media is the New Lane case, which has almost been the linchpin for the national director as well as the NPA. That matter, I have been at pains to explain, is on appeal. And that matter was argued in the Supreme Court, I think it was about a month ago. And we're hoping to get the decision in that matter very soon. So I think we should wait for that decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal before that is again used as an example of the NPA's inability to do its work. So once the decision is out on that matter, we can speak about that. So which are the other matters? They are, and the Gupta extradition is another one that is often cited. And that I have spoken to the public on several occasions about this, and I don't know if I want to bore the public with that again, but it was the decision of the UAE court. We are still having lots of issues about trying to find out the rationale for some of that, for that decision, so that when we do make our next extradition application, that is covered and we don't have a similar outcome. But we're not getting the responses that we want. But we are preparing. The IDAC is working very hard to prepare a case with more charges so that a new extradition application can be launched. So those are the cases that the NPA is criticized for. And that's in the state capture space. And here in sexual and gender-based violence case, it's this one case. So all I ask and urge the South African public is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater because of these hugely important, but it's a few cases that the narrative is built around the NPA can't do its work. But one forgets the thousands of cases, especially in SGBV, where every day victims are receiving justice. So, you know, those are the cases. And as I said, one case has been re-enrolled, the other one's on appeal, and the third one is the Gupta extradition. Those are the three matters. In fact, the New Lane case has been, as I said, the linchpin for the National Director. But we are waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court of Appeal, which we hope will be quite soon.
Yeah, this is not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination. We've seen historically, you know, how difficult and fraught the office of the NDPP has been. I think you've got just under a year left in the role, January 2026, I believe. You know, how do you feel after all of this time, all of, you know, the things that have happened, both the criticisms, you know, your insistence on the public also giving the NPA its due in terms of the successes that it has had. Is this still a job that you're proud of doing, Advocate Batohi?
I think it's the best job in the world, and I feel blessed to have the opportunity to still be leading the NPA. It's not yet over. We have a lot of work to do in the next 10 years. 10 months, sorry, it's not 10 years.
Feels like
we
10
have
years,
a lot of
doesn't
work
it?
to do. Well, yeah, it's been 6 years, but as I said, it's the most purposeful thing. The job of a prosecutor is tough, it's difficult, but we are on the side of justice, and I feel honored to be leading the National Prosecuting Authority. We deal with the criticisms. We are an accountable institution. So we do want the hard questions. We want to be accountable first and foremost to the people of this country. But we do urge that, you know, you give us the space to get the facts, and that when narratives are crafted, they are crafted on facts and not opinions that are formed over dinner tables. And because those are very damaging to the rule of law project in this country. And so, you know, given the devastation in this particular case, I do want to thank the thousands of prosecutors in the country that are working very, very hard every day on these cases in a very thankless job, but we're not doing it for thanks, we're doing it for justice. And we will continue to do that.
Advocate Batohi, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it. Reacting to the Omatoso verdict yesterday, in which he was acquitted, and the moves the NPA will be making in the coming days in also providing that report to the Justice Minister.